But, so, okay, wait till everybody, okay. Are you all ready? Okay.
God bless you, Mom, for your kindness every day, your first thoughts for your family, love and compassion as is your way.
Passage assurance.
God bless you, Mom, for all the things that you do, the meals, the hugs, and kisses, teaching us to tie our shoes.
Go, not so fast next time.
God bless you, Mom, for a care outside the home. You're like a superhero, whatever that you roam. God bless the mom who chooses to stay home. The countless things you do each day could fill a stadium-sized tomb.
Next one, you're 5 too. Wait, give it back to him, he forgot part of it.
God bless you, Mom, for the ways you put family first, soccer games and car rides and all the things you carry in your purse.
A mother is a gift from God, each one designed in a special way from the bottom of all our hearts. We wish you a very...
No, you skipped a piece. You're right here.
No.
Go ahead, do that one instead.
Oops.
It's okay, just do that one.
God bless you, Mom, for your faithfully bringing us to church. You live in a way that shows life, a life for God is worth.
Okay, now passage assurance. Put that right up to your, and go slow.
God bless you, Mom, for the songs you sing us at night. When you sing and when you worship, you show us what is right.
God bless you, Mom, for all the time you spend in prayer. You show so many seeds of faith that you blossom everywhere. God bless you, Mom. God bless you, Mom, for the ways you live out your faith. We are all first-hand witnesses for the difference that it makes. God bless you, Mom, for the words that... God bless you, Mom. Words cannot express our love for all your amazing qualities. We thank our God above.
Last one. And then everybody together.
A mother is a gift from God, each one designed in a special way from the bottom of all our hearts. We wish you a very happy Mother's Day!
Woo! Stay here, we got another pass. Okay. The children are going to help.
O-M-A-N. I'll say it again. 'Cause I'm a woman. O-M-A-N. And that's all. Eat your heart out, Zsa Zsa.
I found that. I couldn't resist. That song is actually from a musical. It's called Smokey Joe's Diner. And it has so many different versions of it. It was hilarious to go through. Yep. But it fit Granny just awesome. Because the words aren't the same on any of the versions. But yeah, I can imagine getting 40 pairs of Levi's done and hang them on the line. And I mean, all that stuff she did all at the same time. I mean, hopefully we aren't cleaning the outhouse and cooking dinner at the same time. So I thought, ew. And the part about the corn liquor in the shower, we should have probably dropped that, but otherwise it fits Granny and it was a lot of fun. So, but that's kind of some of the things we think about as a woman. We think that they do everything. I mean, when I was growing up, it was Helen Reddy. I am woman, hear me. See, I know which ones are my age and older. No. But I was going to, there's a lot that goes with it. That was during the women's movement during the 70s. There was a bunch of stuff about women's lib, and I've been accused of that on occasion. But that's not who I am, but that's what we think of as the woman that comes out now. But today is a day that we set aside to honor mothers. Not just any mother, your mother. Not just, it's not just about the one that you gave birth, because each of us probably have women in our lives other than our birth mom that has made an impact in our life, somebody that has made a difference. So we're going to celebrate all women today, not just those that gave birth to us. And like I said, I like Granny's version of I Am Woman. Personally, I like strong woman leads. Probably part of my personality. But I like watching TV dramas with strong women leads. I like reading books about strong women. I love biographies about women and what they've done and where they've been. Those are the kind of stuff I do. And that's kind of who I am. Maybe that's part of growing up in the 60s and 70s, I'm not sure. But as a young woman growing up during those times, I'm sure I was influenced by the music and the culture going on all around me. But there have been a lot of strong stay-at-home women in the culture as well. In the Bible and in my family too. I remember my dad telling me that his mom used to get up early and she would make them all breakfast, and it was always bacon and eggs and oatmeal and toast. I mean, it was like enough to feed an army every single morning. And there was only 5 kids. I mean, there was only 2 boys, so it wasn't like 5 grown men. But she would feed them that good every day. And he said if we weren't up on time, we knew it. And we got up right away. We never did it more than once. And he said when he got home from the service, he thought he could maybe slack off a little bit. That did not happen, I guess. So, and she was a strong woman that I didn't even get to meet, but I got to hear about. But my other grandma, I mean, she was a strong woman as well. But she was a stay-at-home mom too. And she gardened and seemed like she did everything. And I know I knew her when she had mellowed out in life, and she, how grandmas are. They're a lot different than moms, even if it's to the same people. But I learned a love of gardening from her, a love of cooking and baking. Those are things my grandma did all the time. And I love doing those things as well. What made the biggest impression on me, though, from my grandmother was her love, her unconditional love. Because when this teenage woman came home pregnant from college, she didn't turn me away. She didn't yell at me. She just loved me. She loved me. She loved my daughter. I never felt like I knew I had disappointed her, but she never made me feel that I had disappointed her. She never made me feel ashamed. And that was awesome. And I appreciated that so much, because she was there when I needed a babysitter. Even though she lived in Austin, I could, drop off my daughter occasionally. I mean, she was there for me. And that really helped. It really helped. And I could see her strong love for my grandpa, even though they like to argue a lot. But it was the kind of fun arguing that, you could see the smile and the twinkle while they're hollering at each other. But you knew that at the end of the day, they would still be married. And so that was so cool to see. These kind of women in our lives have made a difference. This morning, I want to share with you some women in the Bible that have made a difference. There are a lot of them. I had narrowed it down to just 6. And I'm going to try not to make it super long because it's a busy day. But we're going to start with a lady that was a judge, and I'm going to be running out of places to put things today. Her name was Deborah. She was a judge in Israel. And it was in the Old Testament. And what we're going to follow along with me will be in Judges 4, 1-14. Deborah was a prophet, it says, the wife of Lebedeth. She was a judge over Israel at that time, and she held court under Deborah's palm between Ramah and Bethel in the hills of Ephraim. The people of Israel went to her in the matters of justice. She sent for Barak, son of Abinoam from Kadesh and Naphtali, and said to him, "It has become clear that God, the God of Israel, commands you, go to Mount Tabor and prepare for battle. Take 10 companies of soldiers from Naphtali and Zebulun. I'll take care of getting Sisera, the leader of Jabin's army, to the Kishon River with all his chariots and troops, and I'll make sure you win the battle." Barak said, "If you go with me, I'll go. But if you don't go with me, I won't go." She said, "Of course I'll go with you, but understand that with an attitude like that, there's no glory for you in it. God will use a woman's hand to take care of Sisera." Deborah got ready and went with Barak to Kadesh. Barak called Zebulun and Naphtali together at Kadesh. 10 companies of men followed him, and Deborah was with him. It happened that Heber the Kenite had parted company with the other Kenites, the descendants of Hobab, Moses' in-law. He was now living in Zainanim Oak near Kadesh. They told Sisera that Barak, son of Abinoam, had gone to Mount Tabor. Sisera immediately called up all his chariots to the Kishron River, 900 iron chariots, along with all his troops who were with him at Harosheth Hagoyim. Deborah said to Barak, "Charge! This very day God has given you victory over Sisera. Isn't God marching before you?" Barak charged down the slopes of Mount Tabor, his 10 companies following him. 10 companies following him. Deborah was a judge in Israel. I don't know if she had a gavel. This isn't exactly a gavel, but it might have been like what Jabin used to kill Sisera, because she used a mallet to put a tent peg through his head. So maybe that was what she had, something more like that. So, but Deborah, God didn't discriminate against women. I mean, this was way back in the Judges. This is before the kings of Israel. Deborah had a place of honor and power, and she led the people of Israel. Even the general wouldn't go to war without her. He said, I'm only going to go if you come along. She was courageous. She was strong in her faith. She believed in God, and she was willing to live it out. I mean, who's going to go to battle with the general and go into the front lines if you didn't believe he's going to win? She believed when God said, "You go, and I'll make sure you have the victory." So when God told Barak that he would defeat the enemy, she believed God. She was so sure that she went with Barak to the battlefield. That's putting feet to your faith. Deborah had great courage and great faith, character traits that we can all aspire to. Next on the list, I'm going to get rid of this. Now I know why they don't wear them all the time. They're hot. Okay. Next on the list is another D. I'm doing them alphabetically because I'm kind of an A person. I'm kind of like that. So it was the easiest way to figure out how to do them today. So the next person on our list is Dorcas. And it comes from Acts 9:36-41. There was a believer in Joppa named Tabitha, which in Greek is Dorcas. She was always doing kind things for others and helping the poor. About this time, she became ill. And she died. Her body was washed for burial and laid in an upstairs room. But the believers had heard that Peter was nearby at Lydda, so they sent 2 men to beg him, "Please come as soon as possible." So Peter returned with them, and as soon as he arrived, they took him to the upstairs room. The room was filled with widows who were weeping and showing him the coats and other clothes that Dorcas had made for them. But Peter asked them all to leave the room, and he knelt down and he prayed. Turning to the body, he said, "Get up, Tabitha," and she opened her eyes. When she saw Peter, she sat up. He gave her his hand and he helped her up. Then he called in the widows and all the believers, and he presented her to them alive. The first thing we know about Dorcas, it says there's a believer in Joppa. She was a believer named Dorcas. Next, we learned she was a seamstress. She was making clothes for the widows. She didn't get to have a sewing machine, but she got to sew. She sewed and took care of the widows and the other people that couldn't take care of themselves, that needed help. She definitely made a difference in the lives of these people in Joppa. But on the national level, there's nobody that really probably knew who she was. She was just a lady that sewed clothes for people. She was just like everybody else. They would not have even noticed she had been missing. But to these people in Joppa, it made a huge difference. She had made a huge difference, and she would be sorely missed. Dorcas had a servant's heart. From the letter D, we're going to go to the letter E. And O'Connor laughed at me. I had this on yesterday, so my head's too big. Here we go. E is for Esther. What an example to our young women of the day. Esther was a young Jewish orphan living with her cousin Mordecai. when it was in, according to her book that's named after her in the Bible, said Esther was the daughter of Abihail, who was Mordecai's uncle. Mordecai had adopted his younger cousin Esther. When it was Esther's turn to go to the king, she accepted the advice of the eunuch in charge of the harem. So she asked nothing except for what he suggested, and she was admired by everyone who saw her. Esther was humble. That's the first thing we see about her. She was humble and willing to listen, to take advice from older people. Now you have to remember, she's a young teenager. She's not an older lady. She's not somebody that's been around and knows that, about authority. She's somebody that's been growing up in her cousin's house. And so, but she was humble enough to go to the guy in charge and say, well, what should I wear? What should I do when I come before the king? Because the king was looking for a queen. And so she was there for that, and that's what her purpose was. And so she didn't want to get up there and find out that she was totally in the wrong. And eventually the king picks her and chooses her to be the next king of Persia, queen of Persia. But then something really that shows who she is and her strong character happens. Haman decides, he works for the king of Persia, and he said, we need to get rid of all the Jews in Susa, in Persia, altogether. So they set up a plan to destroy and annihilate all the Jewish people in Persia. And at this time, Persia basically controlled the entire known world. So they were going to kill all the Jews. And when her cousin Mordecai, he did what a Jew does when they're sad and praying, that he wore sackcloth and ashes, and he sat at the gate of the city. And she wanted to find out what was going on, because they didn't confer with the queens and let them know what was going on, so she had no idea. So she found out what was going on, and Mordecai said, you got to do something. And if you want to follow, I think it'll show up on there. Mordecai sent this reply to Esther when she asked what was going on. He said, don't you think for a moment that because you're in the palace, you will escape when all the other Jews are killed? If you keep quiet at a time like this, deliverance and relief for the Jews will arise from some other place. But you and your relatives will die. Who knows if perhaps you were made queen for just a time as this. Then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai. Go and gather together all the Jews of Susa and fast for me. Do not drink for 3 days, night or day. My maids and I will do the same. And then, though it is against the law, I will go in to see the king. If I must die, I must die. So Mordecai went away and did everything as Esther had ordered him. Esther was brave. Esther was ready to do what she needed to do for her people. She wasn't just going out there and charging, but she was using her intelligence. She knew what she needed to do, and she knew that the first thing she needed to do was pray. She says, me and my maids will do the same, and you guys get everybody to pray. She knew the power of prayer. She had no way of knowing how it was going to turn out, because nobody could enter the king's court and ask to talk to him without his permission. And anybody that tried that could be instantly killed. So she didn't know how it was going to turn out, but she was willing to go. And she did. She had to try to save her people from annihilation. She put her trust in God. She had a strong faith, and she trusted that no matter what happened, he was in control. She trusted God, and she believed in the power of prayer. Our next lady is actually a mother and a daughter team. That's in my hair. And we're going to use the rocking chair for that one. That'll feel good. All right. It's coming from, it's a person that Paul talks about in 1 Timothy. Paul was a spiritual father to young Timothy, a young pastor. And Paul wrote him a letter of encouragement, and it started with a reference to Timothy's upbringing, Eunice and Lois. 2 Timothy 1, 4-6. I remember your genuine faith, for you shared the faith that first filled your grandmother, Lois, and your mother, Eunice. And I know that same faith continues strong in you. This is why I remind you to fan into flames the spiritual gift God gave you when I laid my hands on you. And verse 15 from chapter 3 of that same letter says, you have been taught the Holy Scriptures from childhood, and they have given you the wisdom to receive the salvation that comes by trusting Christ Jesus. Timothy was taught by his mother and his grandmother. It was a faith that was passed down from generations. They had faithfully passed on the baton of faith from one generation to the other. They also had taught Timothy the scriptures. They didn't just tell him what to believe. They taught him from God's word. They didn't just tell him what was the good things and good characters, but they used God's very words to teach him. They didn't wait for him to decide. They taught him from childhood, ever since he was a little kid. They took the time to teach him. That is why our teaching of children about God is so important. It has been researched and found to be pretty accurate that if a child hasn't accepted Christ by the age of 15, the odds of him accepting it as an adult are almost impossible. We can change the tide. That is why it's so important to us here at South Troy to minister and reach children and their families. That's why it's one of our core values, one of our top priorities. We can be the start of the next generation. We can help empower them and help them to learn. We can change the tide. We can help give tools and encouragement to young parents and to young people. Another verse from Timothy, Paul writes this to the young people: "Don't let anyone look down on you because you are young, but set an example for the believers in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity." God calls each of us to be faithful, especially parents, to teach our children. We can't leave it to the church or the youth pastor or the Sunday school teacher. Mom and dads are called to lead their children to know the Lord. Even if you're not a parent, you can influence other children and teach them as well. In Deuteronomy, God gave an edict to the people of Israel, and he told them, he said, when you teach your children, when you get up, when you take a walk, when you go to bed, repeat them again and again. That's all. It isn't just on Sundays. That was Eunice and Lois. They taught young Timothy the scriptures. Eunice and Lois were faith-filled teachers. We have another mom on our list today, and her name is Jochebed. A lot of you probably have no idea who she is. It's an interesting name, and it's not one we hear very often. But we do know her son, very famous guy named Moses. And she was brave and creative, and she was pretty amazing as well. Because when she looked at her son, and from Exodus 2, it says, "About this time, a man and a woman from the tribe of Levi got married. The woman became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She saw he was a special baby and kept him hidden for 3 months. But when she could no longer hide him, she got a basket made out of papyrus." This ain't papyrus. But she got a basket, and then she covered it with pitch and waterproofed it with tar and pitch. And she put the baby in the basket and laid it among the reeds along the bank of the Nile River. The baby's sister then stood at a distance, watching to see what would happen to him. Soon Pharaoh's daughter came down to bathe in the river, and her attendants walked along the riverbank. When the princess saw the basket among the reeds, she sent her maid to go get it for her. When the princess opened it, she saw the baby. The little boy was crying, and she felt sorry for him. "This must be one of the Hebrew children," she said. Then the baby's sister approached the princess. "Should I go and find one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you?" she asked. "Yes, do," the princess replied. So the girl went and called the baby's mother. "Take this baby and nurse him for me," the princess told the baby's mother, "and I will pay you for your help." So the woman took her baby home and nursed him. Later, when the boy was older, his mother brought him back to Pharaoh's daughter, who adopted him as her own. The princess named him Moses, for she explained, "I lifted him out of the water." That was a tough time for Jochebed and Amram. They were aliens in a foreign land. They were immigrants in Egypt. Hebrews who lived there. And the head guy, Pharaoh, got watching these Hebrews, and he realized they were starting to multiply so fast that pretty soon there'd be more Hebrews than Egyptians. So maybe we better take care of this problem. So he said, we're going to kill all the baby boys. As soon as they're born, make sure those baby boys die. And if we find one, obviously they were going to kill them themselves. So that's why when Jochebed seen this little boy, she saw this baby. I mean, it was before the time of ultrasounds and baby revealing. There was no way for her to know she had a boy or a girl until the day. And so here comes this, she has this little baby. She hides him for 3 months. Imagine hiding a baby for 3 months. They're not the quietest little tykes, but she was able to do that. But then she realized she couldn't do it much longer. So she made this basket, and she put him in it and laid him in the river. Now, you know, she had to have known that Pharaoh's daughter came to that place to bathe, because she wasn't just leaving him till the elements. She had a plan. So she puts him out there. Her daughter's out watching, and here comes the princess. And like any pretty much normal young woman, they heard a baby crying. What are you going to do? You're going to go get that basket. And what do you want to do to a crying baby? Anybody? Nicole? Hold it. Yep, and that's what the princess wanted to do. She wanted to hold it and save it, even though it was a Hebrew. And so the coolest, one of the other cool things is Jochebed ended up getting paid to raise her own son a little while. But then she had to be willing to give her son away. She knew that for him to live, he had to go away and be raised by somebody else. Jochebed just demonstrates a strong, sacrificial woman, willing to put the needs of her son above her own wants and desires. Lastly, I want to share with you a woman that was pretty much an entrepreneur in the Bible. She made tents with her husband and with Paul. Her name was Priscilla. She was a tent maker. And in Acts 18 we read, "Then Paul left Athens and went to Corinth, and he arrived from Italy with his, there he became acquainted with a Jew named Aquila, born in Pontus, who had recently arrived from Italy with his wife Priscilla. They had left Italy when Claudius Caesar deported all the Jews from Rome. Paul lived and worked with them, for they were tent makers as he was." Then a little bit down farther, it says, "Then he set sail for Syria," that's Paul, taking Priscilla and Aquila with him. They stopped first at the port of Ephesus, where Paul left the others behind. So Priscilla and Aquila were left behind in Ephesus. When Priscilla and Aquila, they became a part of that community and helped to start the church there. And while they were there, Aquila and Priscilla met Apollos. They heard him preaching boldly in the synagogue. They took him aside, though, and explained the way of God more accurately to Apollos. Because Apollos knew the baptism of John, but he didn't know Jesus Christ. So they introduced him to the next step in his faith. And so Apollos became an awesome speaker, and he went all over. He was an evangelist, basically. But Priscilla and Aquila stayed right where they were to serve. Priscilla was married to Aquila. She was a wife. We don't know if she was a mother. There's no mention of kids here. But they were tent makers. They were strong believers. They were kicked out of Italy because they were believers. And they set up shop in Ephesus. And they helped teach Apollos. So they had some great things going on. And Priscilla was a great partner in business and in ministry. She worked with her husband and Paul. Eventually, there became a house church in Ephesus, and her husband led that church. God blessed them with a good living and fierce loyalty to one another and to the other believers. She was one of these behind the scenes people, supporting the ministry, supporting those that are serving. But in Romans 16:3 and 1 Corinthians 16:19, Paul refers to Priscilla and Aquila as co-workers in the ministry. Priscilla was definitely a strong lay leader. Possibly she was a teacher as well. And there are some that have come to believe, many scholars and authorities, that she could be possibly the writer of the book of Hebrews. So that is pretty cool. She was an awesome lady. She was learned and a strong woman and served alongside others, her husband and Paul and Apollos. She didn't serve to get her own glory, but to glorify God. Priscilla was a faithful partner and a team player. Now, these women aren't the only women in the Bible. There are many more that we could learn from. We can learn more from faith and love, courage, and self-sacrifice for pretty much every woman that God lists in the Bible. And that God has an awesome view of women. There isn't anything mushy or patronizing about how God views them. In the beginning, it says, "So God created human beings in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them." God created both men and women in his image. We're here to bring him glory. The women we learned of today were only famous, mostly they're famous in God's word. They aren't in the book of Who's Who's. There's nothing about them that would make them get voted for or get put into office. They were just solid women of faith. Women of integrity live lives of courage, faith, a servant's heart. They have a power of prayer. They're intelligent. They're creative. They have sacrificial love. They have loyalty, working together. They have the gift of teaching and leading others. Now, we don't all have all of this. It took 6 women for us to learn all those things this morning. We are all giving different gifts. And it's not only for ladies and girls. All of us can learn from these women in the Bible. We are all his own special creation, each one of us. And I pray that we all will strive to live and grow in our faith and our courage and our love to use the gifts that God has given us. Today is the day we honor mothers. That is one of those, if you ever watch those guys on TV, they're always saying, "Hi, Mom." I mean, we all love our moms, and we all want to give them the glory that they need and they deserve. And I hope you will today to remember each one. Take some time today to encourage